we've got a powerhouse panel packed today with Britt, Bowker from McMack Consulting, Delany, Dixon from NASEO, and Kamden and Maas from Atlanta Cylinders. These ladies are on the forefront of hydrogen. They range from strategy and policy to the nuts and bolts of the industry deployment. So before we dive in, you're probably all thinking like, wow, that's a lot of girls up there. I mean, are you in the right room? Yes, you are. We are gonna hear some of the sharpest perspectives from the industry leaders. And we'll keep the conversation focused and practical. We'll move through 4 themes. The roles of each of them are playing and shaping hydrogen, how we scale hydrogen demand in the transport sector, how collaboration actually can accelerate infrastructure rollout, and the role of women in leading clean energy solutions. So I'm going to join them, and we're going to get started with a quick introduction from each of them, and let's get moving.
Hello, everyone. My name is Delany Dixon. I am a senior program manager for transportation for the National Association of State Energy Officials. We represent the 56 state and territory energy offices across the country. So I support our transportation work, both EVs all the way to hydrogen and other alternative fuels. So great to be here today.
Yes, my name is Britt Bowker. I am, I think, the only one from Louisiana on the panel. I'm based here in Baton Rouge. I specifically got involved in this work with the Infrastructure Act. Louisiana was awarded in one of the Build Back Better awards. So it will actually end next year. It's called H to the Future. And at the time, it was written to help Louisiana energy companies in the transition and bring new energy companies to Louisiana. Interestingly enough, no one knew that the IRA would come right after. So now Louisiana is reporting over $60 billion of renewable announced projects. So that falls in line with some of our current companies that have had infrastructure and facilities here for decades. So you're probably familiar with CF Industries. In Donaldsonville, I think 80% of all the nitrogen in our body comes from that one facility. Just fun fact. But it has been a very fast and evolving time. And so now I was doing the business development work for them, and now I'm working specifically more on some of the actual projects to get to really move dirt, as we like to say. So it's really trying to line up the permits and the partnerships and ensuring that the communities and the workforce is ready for this really exciting time and really once in a lifetime opportunity for the state.
Wow, look at these wonderful women. And right before lunch, I know everyone's getting hungry. Hi, my name is Kamden Maas. I am the sales manager for Atlanta Cylinders. I have been in the hydrogen world for about 3 years now. I started with a production and distribution company and now moved strictly to storage of all gases ranging from oxygen in the hospital all the way up to CNG and then also hydrogen. And then we'll let Susan talk about herself a little bit. I know she never does. Shameless plug. We'll start there.
Thanks, the pressure's on, right? So I'm Susan Shifflett. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Hydrogen Alliance. We are a 501c6 business trade alliance. Our membership includes members like large oil and gas companies to large renewables, to large producers of hydrogen, to small and mid-size hydrogen producers as well. We actually push for smart policy and strategic regulations in the state of Texas. So, but having said that, we're going to jump back in because, you know, I like to call hydrogen, it's like a roller coaster ride. It has been up, down, up, down, up, down. And it's unfortunate because we had all this momentum and then we were all waiting for 45V to comes out, and then it's like, I called it the speed bump. And so we're trying to get the momentum going, and we are still doing a lot of projects. There are still a lot of projects moving forward in Texas and Louisiana as well. I know that Louisiana is trying to oust us as a leader in hydrogen, and what we're going to find is it's going to take all kinds of projects. A lot of our projects in Texas are changing. They're shifting. We don't just deal with hydrogen transportation, we deal with everything else. So e-methanol for ships is getting a lot of interest right now. Sustainable aviation fuels, a lot of interest. So a lot of the derivatives from hydrogen are where a lot of our companies are shifting to, because one of the biggest things, and this is what I'm sure we're about to talk about, is offtake. What are we going to do with all this hydrogen? Hydrogen isn't new, it's been around forever. Texas produces 1/3 of all of the world's hydrogen. So, it's a good thing, and we have pipelines. We have pipelines that come over here into Louisiana as well. So let's start talking about this, though. What is it going to take to get these projects moving and become actually in the transportation sector? What will it take, in your opinion?
Okay, I'll start off. Let's just look at the very obvious. Obviously, we need lots of money and collaboration. Besides, for those two elephants in the room, I would say a strategic plan to roll out, make sure that everything is very visible from the start, financially and infrastructure-wise, are great first steps, not only for people in the industry, but then also just common people as well who are not used to seeing hydrogen as a common fuel.
Yeah, so I too think it's interesting, and yeah, the word hydrogen, even when I had to go out and tell, not only in the US, but then internationally about hydrogen, we actually even rebranded it to Louisiana Future Energy because it was really confusing for some people to understand the role of hydrogen. So whether you're talking gray, blue, green, it all gets its different names, but ultimately, what that really does mean is, what is the demand? As Susan mentioned, the demand is definitely here in the U.S. And then obviously, I don't know if all of you were here for Dr. Upton's presentation, especially for the Houston and Texas, because of our access to the Gulf of Mexico and then the Mississippi River, it is going to be, our demand has become very global. The recent announcement, Hyundai is a big example of that, but I was even told with the Hydrogen Task Force that we have, that was the first time they've ever even conceptually been able to see where hydrogen plays a role within Hyundai. And so I think the hear, feel, touch has been really important. So, thank you, Anne, for bringing in the actual trucks that we were able to see. But ultimately, it's going to, I call it the 5 S's, is because it's those things that are important, like supply and demand sinks, the offtakes, the shared corridors. So not only do we have pipelines, but especially within the transportation sector, these global companies and their carbon scores are going to care about how their products, once they reach our border or coming off our border, or how they're going to be transported. So just between the current infrastructure that exists, I think it's 15 I even wrote it down to make it refineries between Houston and New Orleans. Then we have an additional 5 to 6 LNG export terminals between us, 3 nuclear facilities, and 150 to 200 plus petrochemical and chemical refining. All of those companies are going to have global goals, and so that right there, that's your customer. So that's why I think you have to pin down who is going to need this. And then the other ones are standardization, site smart. Louisiana just put $150 million towards site development in this last legislation. So keep an eye on that, because that will be an opportunity for a private partnership within the state. And then, of course, your skills and your workforce planning is obviously a big piece of it.
Yeah, I echo both of what you just said, but when it comes to the role of the State Energy Office, I think a lot of, their strengths is being planners and conveners. So as many of you know, in 2024, Louisiana legislature passed a resolution to create the Clean Hydrogen Task Force to explore opportunities for hydrogen production, storage, and use within the state, and then make recommendations to the governor in December of this year. And so the task force is led by a lawmaker, but includes the Energy Office, economic agencies, utilities, and other companies and academic institutions. So that level of kind of planning and coordinating amongst state private sector and academia is really helpful, and definitely something that the State Energy Office can play a large role in when it comes to planning. Another thing that state energy offices have done in the hydrogen space is create roadmaps, strategic plans to kind of outline how the hydrogen industry might look in their state, and what different partnerships, regulatory barriers, and policies need to be implemented to support that. So I think bringing it back to the state energy offices is really convening, planning, and trying to move the ball forward.
Great. So to make it mainstream, I mean, hydrogen's not cheap. So let's just be realistic. And we are fortunate in Texas. We do have the TCEQ, Texas Emission Reduction Plan, which offers funding for people moving towards alternative fuels. It's funny, it's a $2 billion fund, but they only spend like $255 million of it every year. So the fund just keeps growing and growing and growing. So we're trying to get that money spread out. But we were fortunate 4 years ago. Texas is in session every other year for 5 months, which makes it quite difficult and crazy. But we were fortunate to get a new program, a state-funded program, to help vehicles grow in Texas and infrastructure grow. And so we do have 44 vehicles that are coming online. We are having supply issues with those vehicles, and we are waiting for those vehicles. And so what can Louisiana do? I mean, I think the biggest thing with states is we learn from each other. I hate to use the C word, but California, we're going to learn from California. So what can we do to learn, or what can we do to grow the market here in Louisiana? And I mean, is funding the issue? Is it the fuel is the issue? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I guess since I'm from Louisiana, one of the things that has been a struggle I've heard from a lot of the off-takers that are going to want this infrastructure and are willing to pay for this infrastructure is that they have to be first of the kind. And so that's a difficult thing for companies that have shareholders, and they're massive. Some of them massive, some of them smaller, and it's a risk to come out first. So I do think it helps in some way. Like, I like to say Texas is really our partner, but in a lot of ways I even like to make it competitive in the way that the more that Texas can share their story of the infrastructure and the charging facilities that they have, that will encourage more of our private side to invest and or push government to help, or state government to build more of these. So an example that was and Louisiana is at an advantage because we're not a very large state. It's a very rural state, and then unfortunately it's a very poor state. And so we have a lot of opportunity to build out this. And when Texas won the charging over in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, what is it? It's an actual grant, and she could, kind of describe it more.
It's the EP. It's one of the CFI grants. So it's $75 million for 5 stations, and it's the triangle.
Yeah, and ideally, they connected with us in Louisiana and said, okay, well, really what we need is we need to go from the Port of Houston all the way to the Port of New Orleans, all the way up to Shreveport, Alexandria, so that it can go back over to Dallas. Because as I mentioned, that is all of your clients in that circle. And so the more that we can continue to build out, and then that putting the pressure on, saying, my clients are over here and I need a charging station, that's the kind of conversations that we have to support together. We can't just sit in the back of the room and say nothing.
Sorry. I think having convenings like this is a great place to start, thanks to the great help from Anne, Amanda McClinton, and Ed O'Brien from the Louisiana Energy Office. NASEO is able to host a hydrogen fueling station workshop on Tuesday, just the other day in the room next door. And this was a great opportunity to bring together stakeholders across the state to really dive deeper into some of the challenges and opportunities for hydrogen fueling infrastructure, and really honing in on siting, permitting, and some of the safety concerns with hydrogen. And so this was actually funded by a DOE award through the Hydrogen Fuel Cells Technologies Office to ultimately create like a regulatory framework to address some of these permitting safety concerns and barriers. And so we heard from academia, Hyundai, infrastructure providers, DOE, Center for Hydrogen Safety, the Louisiana Workforce Commission, and others to kind of share their insights and get ideas and try to tackle some of these challenges during that convening. And this will ultimately help inform that regulatory framework and kind of dive deeper into some of those more thornier challenges.
Right? So to touch on what all of these ladies said, really being our own advocates and advertising the small successes we have is we have to do those steps. I know it may feel repetitive, but it's vital in where the economy and the market is for hydrogen to just brag about those little wins. Also to stress the fact that hydrogen is not replacing anything, especially in the states of Texas and Louisiana, where oil is such a main economy factor, that this is just an alternative. It is not replacing, just like EV, solar, just like they all were in the very beginning. The technology will catch up at some point, and it'll just diversify the portfolio that we have on energy reliance.
Thank you for bringing that up. We actually use the terminology expansion, energy expansion, because Texas gets $28 billion from the oil and gas industry. That's roads, that's first responders, that's schools. So we are not gonna leave $28 billion, but we call it expansion. And there's room, there's all kids in the pool is what we always say. So there is room for everything. And so I wanna go back to what Delany also said about, because I'm gonna have to do a shameless plug now. October 14th, the Texas Hydrogen Alliance with UT Austin is hosting a fire marshal awareness training. Because what we're also finding, hydrogen's very much like natural gas actually in the industry. It's kind of scary. It's like I'm reliving natural gas 2.0. I used to run that alliance. So, but what we're finding is Houston may have a code, the International Fire Code of 2015. Dallas will have International Fire Code of 2023 or 24. There's no standards that are consistent throughout the state. And so that is something that I would love to work more to get a standardization. But October 14th, there's a hydrogen awareness training in Austin at the H2 Proto Hub. If you have never seen hydrogen, this is a great facility that we are fortunate to have in our backyard. It's a quick drive, a flight over, from here. It takes renewable natural gas, has a steam methane reformer on site, creates about 80 kilograms of hydrogen that gets stored on site. Then it also has two electrolyzers that mimic wind and solar, creates about 40 kilograms, and it's got a refueling station attached to it. And so they've got 3 Toyota Mirais that are refueling there. So it's an all-in-one unit that people can come and see kick the dirt, which is important. Going back to what Kamden says, is we have got to show that we have projects that are moving forward and that we're not a science experiment. And we have got to celebrate the little wins and even big wins. So, having said that, we've kind of addressed a little bit about this. What can we learn from the other clean energy fuels? Any ideas, comments, suggestions on that?
So NASEO and the state energy offices have long supported EV charging infrastructure, and so that's definitely a technology that I feel like we can learn from in terms of some of the permitting challenges. So state energy offices kind of led the charge, pun intended, of EV charging infrastructure through the Volkswagen settlement. A lot of state energy offices were direct recipients of those funds to pay for EV charging infrastructure. And of the many challenges that you kind of run into with EV charging, siting and permitting has been one of the largest challenges that's still being tackled, but there are some lessons that can be learned from EV charging permitting that can potentially be applied to hydrogen fueling infrastructure. I think first and foremost is education and engagement with authorities holding jurisdiction. They have had little to no experience with EV charging infrastructure, and so it was really, it's been really important for EV charging developers to engage those AHJs earlier on to kind of during the project development phase, so they can identify potential issues that project developers may want to consider, so the problem doesn't come up later on down the road and delay things even further. Which also familiarizes the AHJs with the processes, technology of EV charging infrastructure installation, increase their knowledge, and then even share best practices with neighboring jurisdictions. Larger AHJs can also potentially hire designated EV charging permitting officials if they're in a larger jurisdiction with a lot of EV charging projects. So having that kind of education and early engagement with the permitting officials on the EV charging technology can be applied to the hydrogen fueling infrastructure as well.
Well, I find I find this conundrum interesting in the sense that we've essentially in Louisiana somewhat gone through introducing new technology to a community and really learned what not to do with CCS and how that has really affected our community and our project development. So, that aside, if you really even kind of go even further and pull back, the 1970s, we were really known as a country of builders. I mean, that was a big boom. A lot of our electricity infrastructure, a lot of our institutions, colleges, there was a lot of building in that time period. And so much so, you can even find, but the interesting thing, you could go to college for free, but couldn't buy a flat screen TV for free. So the reverse is somewhat happened now today, where you can fill your house with a lot of TVs, but the cost of living has gotten so expensive. You can't go, to college for free like you could. There's just not a lot of things that have been built. And there's a multitude of reasons why this is, and everybody has different theories. But ultimately, we know that we have overcomplicated the system and building has really ceased. And now we're trying to catch up. I mean, whether it be EV charging stations that we need or data centers, I mean, we need more power. And so that is why everybody says, every idea needs to come to the forefront because we've got to build more. I think it is build, baby, build, isn't the expression? But if we want a certain future, we are going to have to build and invest more in what we want. And that's where I think we've got to understand, when we built, what did we do well? But then what did we do also not do well? I mean, we know that we might have had linear permitting, but at the same time, there were a lot of communities that we know really got left behind. So I just don't want to oversimplify it because I think if we're going to do it well, it's going to be complex. We can't have too many goals, too many standards, or too many regulations, or we are going to be behind of this infrastructure bill that we need to move forward. But I am, I don't want to be like Igor and Negative Nancy because I was saying that, there's definitely more tailwind than there is headwind on trying to move forward to build a lot of this. And specifically, the example that is used a lot in the state is that during Hurricane Katrina, one of the most interesting things happened where a lot of people really came together really quickly to get resources to people that really needed it. There were, good or bad, people could say the same for COVID. There was different things that happened where people actually came together for a goal and got to what we needed. And so I'm very encouraged by that story to know that, and because of the work I've done in the state for H the Future and then even the fuel grant, there is opportunities for us to take away some of these layers, but what we know what happened in the 70s is you cannot leave your communities behind because they will be involved in the process, and you don't want them to feel like they're not in the driver's seat. So those days are gone, and now we really need to figure out what does that look like to work together versus against each other.
You two did a great job summing it up. I would add the one little tidbit of patience. Technology for every different system, whether it be diesel or seed oil or solar, the technology is kind of at a slow, and then all of a sudden it spikes once everything is scaled and it does function properly. So it will take time on investors' sides and patience until they can actually see their return on investment.
So I do love that Britt's talking about the 70s. I'm probably the only one up here that was born in the 70s, so just saying. Okay, so let's move forward to collaboration. We know we always hear that C word too. So collaboration, I mean, how do we create true alignment between industry and the government, and to accelerate deployment? I mean, Clean Cities, I can't push Clean Cities enough. Anna does a great job, and I love that actually the Texas Clean Cities and Ann work a lot together. But how can we collaborate more to accelerate this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I already kind of answered this, so I won't repeat myself. But I think kind of coordinating earlier on these types of topics is really helpful, because then like when a funding opportunity does come out, you've already established partnerships and potential project ideas to then kind of move forward with the project proposal. I know during the last few years, we've seen a lot of success with Clean Cities Coalition, state energy offices, NASEO, other partners applying to projects and then getting awarded, but then maybe they're paused or not going to move forward. But those partnerships and relationships were already are established, and that doesn't go away. And so that kind of work can continue once you have kind of those frameworks and project proposals already kind of developed, when either a new funding opportunity comes across or another opportunity for like a public-private partnership comes up, that's already a good way to kind of move forward.
Well, only because I have a good analogy for that, in the sense that I've heard the analogy that these programs that we know that we've advantaged from potentially in the last couple of years of collaboration, they really set the table for us, but it's now time for us to bring the meal. And when I say bring the meal, it's time for, standardized permitting, shared corridors, and bankable off-takers. So that is going to be the meat and potatoes that we are going to need to move forward. So don't forget that there are so many opportunities, and people and I mean, how we connected was the table was set, and then now it's up to us to kind of bring that meal together. We know that we have different pipelines, storage opportunities, and then also your open data. I mean, we're seeing more of that come now out from different like EPRI and RMI. A lot of national organizations are trying to get a lot of this data together, because we do need to rely on this open transparency of data. I know that some of this is innovation and you got to keep it that really close, but there's a lot of things that we have in common. So let's try to put that out to the masses so that we can all work together on it.
I would say collaboration also comes from everyone seeing the big picture. If we're focused on the short-term goal, then we're all going to be biting at each other's heels trying to make the $500 on the storage, right? So if public and private parties all see the end result where we can all win all together in the next decade on the return, that's what will drive the collaboration to actually work, instead of everyone trying to develop their own lane.
So we talked a little bit about communities and how do we build the trust in the communities when it comes to hydrogen. I mean, a lot of it is education. I've got plenty of nightmare stories of stuff that has gone on in Texas. Obviously, getting in there first and getting in there fast with the community. But what are your takeaways, or what do you suggest for companies that are going to be doing hydrogen and how do they engage with their community leaders?
Just show up. Show up. Like, go to the Jambalaya fundraiser. Wear your company shirt. I mean, you've got to put in the time to show up to their events, because once you get to know that community, you can make a much better strategic plan. I know that's difficult because you also have bottom lines to make and you have a lot of work to do, but that's just a big risk, and that is what we have found. I mentioned on the carbon sequestration issue is that I think one of the mistakes, now granted every parish is different, we know Louisiana is a little backwards, but I believe that, or we have now looked in the rearview mirror to say some of the education was a little too much, a little too hard, and a little bit down their throats that did not land well. It was too much science, it was a little more scarier than what they wanted, versus what does it look like understanding their needs and what's important to them? Is it the football game this afternoon? Is it that they want to fish on the lake that you are, potentially going to be doing work on? Is it the gas station that you think is going to, it's going to bring in all this freight that they don't want? You got to understand where you need to be first, and that really just, honestly, you can't just come in with a message without first knowing who they are.
Bringing it back again to safety, I think what Susan mentioned about the first responder trainings and making sure the community is equipped with the right tools and information on how to respond to any type of emergency involving this new technology. I think safety is probably the most important thing to most people, and with EV battery fires getting a lot of attention and on social media and whatnot, we can definitely see how that kind of increases people's concerns about safety, but getting out in front of it, getting in the community, increasing trainings and kind of educational components, I think is really important, because safety is a number one concern, and I think that's a good place to start as well, as what you said too, so.
Well, the library too of that education is important. So what we've noticed with CCS is that they love Facebook, and there is a lot of Facebook groups, and they're funded by the most bizarre ways, and they are getting larger. You mentioned our legislative session as well was very defensive versus more of what we were trying to do is make policy that would make things, better. And again, it's a very different world than it was even in the 1970s, where people don't understand that we just know so much more than we did when we built a lot of this stuff 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So that I should mention, that has been helpful, where when the Facebook stuff comes, is that you have actual factual information that is in a easy digestible way for them to understand. So having that library, and again, that's back to the collaboration, that's not something one company should have to pay for. It's something you should all do, and you should all be able to sing from that same song sheet when you go to market, so that you know that you have something to reference back, because that otherwise you're just a one-man band.
Yes, all of this is great input. The library was a great analogy, definitely. Showing history. Hydrogen has been around forever. Having that educational piece, like we're all speaking about on every single panel, is obviously vital to move forward, but then also showing that it has been around for 150 years. It is used in everyday things that you eat, like your Ritz crackers for hydrogenation uses hydrogen. Using those little fun facts will stick into the brains of individuals to understand that this is not as uncommon as you'd like to think it is, or destructive.
So the keyboard warriors got us pretty good this session in the very beginning. They were saying that we're going to drain all the aquifers in Texas using water for hydrogen production. But we were able to tap that down because I was telling Britt this. City of Houston loses 30 billion gallons of water in leaky pipes alone every single year. That's one city. So Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin aren't much better either. So anyways, okay, so let's also move forward. Let's talk about skills and the skill gap with the workforce development. Let's go ahead. I mean, is there crossover from the petrochemical industry here in Louisiana that you see? And what's being done to address this issue?
You go.
Yes, of course. From the oil industry, from the industrial gas industry, all of those skills are transferable to hydrogen specifically. I think it is a seamless transition for a lot of the current employees, but I do want to put a heavy stress, and we'll die on that hill. We need to make the trade sexy again. The technical schools are so vital for any build, baby build, or anything we want to do. We have to ensure that we have labor force. And right now, it's just not attractive to any generation. And the technical schools that I've worked with in the past have to go into middle schools, not even high schools, because by the time you're in high school, the parents have already brainwashed their kids into, you have to go to college, no matter what, even if you're getting a communications degree, right? So these technical schools have the education and the experience for the next generations to build what exactly we're talking about for the infrastructure.
Yeah, and there's more, I have a lot more people that you can connect with if you really want to kind of understand. I know in Louisiana what we're doing, that is why even fuel is one of the grants that was awarded, and they have been working on it. But it is transferable, and people understand that. However, there already, we know, is an issue of getting people even interested into STEM. So there's a lot of really smart people doing a lot of this work. I know in Texas, Upskill is a great resource as well. And ideally, as we evolve and understand, it'll be great. Always the issue I've heard from anybody trying to craft any of these workforce programs is the lack of security of these projects. So nothing's harder than a company, let's just say Air Products, and I don't, any of the people are in the room. They have a project coming, and they would love to be able to say, this is what we need, this is the amount of people we need, and keep going. However, they're publicly traded, so things change. And B, they already have a presence in a business here. So they can't come out and guarantee something and then some policy come through or some change in the market, and then they're not able to fulfill that promise to those students who had trained for it. So the way that I know a lot of companies in Louisiana are addressing it is, what is kind of a shared skill that we all need, and how can we then help the education system build that up? So that was one way I know that they've tried to figure that kind of conundrum out, and not get too highly technical, and let, down the road we'll get a little more technical in some of these skill sets.
Not to bring it back to EVs again, but I think one of the most important things that we've talked about in EV charging infrastructure workforce development, in terms of training more people to install, maintain, and operate EV charging infrastructure, is the need for wraparound services and making trainings more accessible. So things like stipends, registered apprenticeships, tuition assistance, things that are going to make it easier for people to learn the new skill, but to continue to get paid and be able to take care of their families. Things like transportation, childcare, those kind of essential services to make it a little bit more accessible for people. I think those same principles can be applied to building up a hydrogen workforce for generation all the way to end users, transportation.
So Britt, you brought up STEM training or STEM education. There is a group out there called H2 Grand Prix that has a hydrogen education curriculum, and they go into middle schools and high schools, and they develop, they build fuel cell cars that run on hydrogen. It's pretty cool. So, and then they compete. They're trying to do it where every state then sends somebody to the nationals, but it's international now, and they compete at RE+, and it's great fun. We had them, actually, a group out of Dallas-Fort Worth, we had them come down to the Capitol and race their cars in the Capitol during session. And they're small. They're like little remote control cars, and actually one car hit a column and destroyed it. It was totaled. So, but anyways, it's a great opportunity, so if you're interested there. So I'm gonna go back to something. So there's 4 women up here. There's several women. Clean energy has been a very positive thing for women. And if you could look at your younger self, what advice would you give her? This is off script, so I do that. I'm sorry, but come on. What advice would you give a younger self if you could go back?
Yes, going back a full 3 years. Just kidding. Just to be authentic. Like, everything in corporate America is for you to fit into a box that they want you to fit into, politically and intelligence-wise, how you hold yourself. I think I build trust with my customers or friends in the industry by being authentically myself. That's where you get the creative ideas, where the collaboration truly occurs, because you are being yourself and using your own brain thoughts instead of what everyone else is feeding you. So I would definitely tell myself to be authentic from the start. It'll help not only my own personal growth, but then also my development in my career and completing deals, getting things done.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny because I guess, what is it? Women shaping hydrogen economy. I would say, I guess I am definitely of the generation where I was given gender equality of education and opportunities. So I am always felt like I was always, even with my male counterparts when I was younger and in school and could compete against them, and I had all the opportunities the same. But what I didn't realize is things would always change after you have children. That hasn't gone away for women, and that has been difficult to kind of navigate, and mainly because, it's statistically just proven still that it has to still fall on, if we're going to have more women in the hydrogen economy, we do need to now figure out, okay, if you get them to a certain point of education and skill sets and you've worked with them as an employee, what are those things that they are going to need to be able to continue to work with you and for your organization, because that hasn't changed much. And I guess I was really naive on that. I was like, well, I'll just hire somebody to do all that work. And it's like, that doesn't work like that. So yeah, the statistics, do you want, I even looked them up because I was like, I'm curious. So do you know that 85% of women leave full-time work once they have a child or scale back? That is like a lot of the workforce. They either go to part-time or they leave. 19% leave completely. And so that's a big number of people that we need to continue this work. 32% less are now in management once they have their child versus other men are less than 10. And then on the opposite, 74% also will stay the same or have less earning potential once they have children. So I just think that that's important for everybody because, as I said, I always felt like I was equal with males, but I think everybody should know as they are trying to build their workforce that we've got to figure out ways of policy, childcare, et cetera, because I don't want my child to feel that way, going forward in life. So we got to figure out how to keep people in the workforce, women in the workforce.
Yes, very well said. I think my advice to myself would be to just keep open all opportunities that are part of a larger goal. So if you're wanting to, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, if you care about that sort of thing, and that's your end goal. You don't have to be a climate scientist. There's other ways that you can kind of get involved, and I didn't really know that a while ago, but as I kind of was exposed to a bunch of different, women in the field and other leaders, that there's lots of ways that you can support the energy, what did you say? Not energy transition, energy. Expansion. Lots of different ways you could support energy expansion through, working on the nonprofit level to support state energy offices or consulting. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do that isn't, that you might not have thought was possible, but it does kind of support that larger goal of maybe of what you dreamed of when you were younger. So, yeah.
So in conclusion, any final thoughts on hydrogen and your role that you're playing to shape the future? Y'all are speechless? That doesn't happen much, does it?
Well, I will take this opportunity to say, come buy my steel cylinders for hydrogen storage. Yeah, no, but in conclusion of hydrogen development, I do seriously believe and have invested personal time, obviously personal money, into the development of this fuel. It is here to stay. It came 50 years ago, it drifted out, now it is here to stay. It has been in our infrastructure of the pipeline through these two beautiful states. Now we're just taking the next step for the public to know how it's used.
I think the kind of takeaway or something to just, I always think about now in the energy space is this is a massive GDP for our country, and we've become, it's very apparent now that it's a have or have not situation, and it is a great position right now for not just Louisiana, but also obviously the U.S. to continue to take our skills of have and innovation to really do that next layer, to really change multi-generational lives here, because there are a lot of people that were left behind, and it doesn't have to be that way, because to your point, there are multiple ways that you can get involved in this space. And we know that the runway is going to be there. So as long as we're running a marathon, guys, but we'll get there.
I would say just continued collaboration and sharing lessons learned and best practices. During our workshop the other day, we had somebody from California who was very candid about some of the mistakes and lessons learned that they've had in their journey of deploying hydrogen fueling infrastructure on the light duty and heavy duty, and kind of how they would have done things differently if they could start over. And I think being a little bit more honest about some of those mistakes can really help other states not make the same ones, and be a good opportunity to learn from one another.
Hydrogen's not just technology, it's not new. It's a chance to reimagine what energy can be for Louisiana, for Texas, for the nation, for the world. We do have the resources in our great states, and we've got the talent, that's for sure. So we just have to have the vision to take it forward and the leadership to scale it. So, and to invest in it and build it in a way that it impacts all of us and benefits all of us. So hydrogen is here, the opportunity is here, and we're ready to take that and lead.